If you're looking to grow a staple crop in your garden that feeds you a ton, easy to grow, feeds the soil, and can be preserved for years without any special equipment, it's going to be this guy right here, the Puerto Rican black bean. I started these plants in March, but you can grow them all the way probably to about August. So they are a great crop to grow here in Florida or any of our southern regions or super hot climates that summers are tough for most plants, because this one doesn't mind. Technically, the Puerto Rican black bean is actually a cowpea, but when you open them up, they don't look like cowpeas. So cowpeas are black-eyed peas, a traditional bean with the black spot on them, but the Puerto Rican black bean looks like and tastes like just like a regular black bean. So they are a great addition to the garden during the summer when not a lot of things want to grow in our super hot climates. I started mine in March, but like I said, you can start it much later. If you want to use it strictly as a cover crop, where you're not going to be harvesting any of these beans right here, you don't have to let it grow to maturity. So it doesn't have to get to the point where it's creating the beans. But if you're growing it as a staple crop, then you're going to want to give it a lot of time. It's a little slow to start. It kind of stays a little seedling for quite a long time, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks. Think tomato timeline. And then it just bursts forth like this, especially if you put it in full sun. It can handle some shade, but it's just going to be so much happier if it's given complete and full Florida sun or complete and full southern sun. So that's going to be your 8 to 12 hours pretty much all day long. It is overwhelming this trellis so badly. My arch trellis is doing fine. My flat panel trellis is doing fine, but the A-frame, the weight of this plant is starting to make it lean on each side. The poles aren't wanting to stay in the ground, so I am going to have to take it down soon. But this goes to show you exactly how much trellis space these guys need. They need a lot. And if you don't have a large garden, there are other options. I like to grow my Seminole pumpkin up a palm tree, and I think the Puerto Rican black bean would do really well growing up another tree like a palm tree or pretty much anything else. It has a very good crawling pattern, so it sprawls very easily. It doesn't need like a palm tree that has the palm fronds that come out. Like the Seminole pumpkin needs some help, but this guy, he can pretty much climb anything that you give him. A wooden fence, he could climb that. He could climb a chain link fence. He could climb, you know, trees, arbors. I mean, he even tries to climb my pool cage. So anything that you can give it, traditional or not traditional, it will be great for this plant. And it does grow pretty crazy wild. It grows so fast. Every week I come out here because we have a lawn guy and he's got to get around this plant. And every week I cut back any of these that I see. And by the next week, the plant is just as full as it was the week before. I mean, it grows so fast. Now let's talk about cultivation. How do you take care of this plant? What kind of fertilizer does it need? What are the watering needs? Is there disease or pests that you need to look out for? Well, this guy is probably going to be the easiest plant you're ever going to grow because none of those things apply. It's pretty shocking, actually. Okay, so it's part of the legume family, so it doesn't need fertilizer. It fixes its own nitrogen. So I have not given it a single drop of fertilizer. Now, if you're starting beans, peas, cowpeas, Puerto Rican black beans, any kind of legume for the first time, you're gonna wanna use inoculant. Inoculant introduces like a natural bacteria to the soil, and that specific bacteria is what the plant uses to fix its own nitrogen to make the nice green leaves. But if you're growing in an area that has never grown beans or peas before, it doesn't naturally have that, you could plant it without. It's going to be really slow to start. It might struggle a little bit. You might have to give it some, you know, high nitrogen liquid fertilizer like a fish fertilizer. I like Alaska's fish fertilizer if you don't use inoculant. Now, if you've ever grown beans or peas in your garden in that particular area, then that bacteria will naturally be occurring there and you won't have to do it ongoing. Now for watering, When they're young, or when they're seedlings, when they're first starting out, I do water them probably about twice a week. I do mulch around them when they're young. They do take a while to grow, like I mentioned earlier, so you do kind of have to baby them for those first like 2 to 4 weeks. But once they start taking off, I actually stop watering them altogether. They grow during our summer season, so usually that means that they are growing during our big rainfall season, or during the time when we have so much more water. And so that is what waters them. They don't actually need anything more than that. They don't need to be supplemented. And because they create all of this huge amount of foliage, they're basically mulching themselves. They're creating a mat along the ground to kind of make that water stay in the ground and in the soil, kind of like mulch would do. So they don't need to be watered once they get a little bit larger. As for pests, they get a lot of pests. I mean, I have seen so many bugs in these plants, things I've never seen before, all kinds of different kinds of grasshoppers, all kinds of bees and wasps, aphids, leaffoot bugs, looper grasshoppers. I mean, pretty much every pest that you can imagine loves to be in here, including Gregory the garden snake. He tends to hang out in here sometimes. When I'm moving around the garden, he'll hop into one of these beds and hide out. But here's the cool thing. You don't have to treat them. This plant, as you can see, is doing absolutely just fine, and I have not treated a single pest. There's parts of it that get pretty overgrown with like aphids, but it doesn't seem to impact the plant. It doesn't, decrease the vitality of the plant. It doesn't take away from the leaves. Lots of these leaves have chew marks in them. Doesn't matter. It still grows. It just outpaces and outgrows the damage that the pests can do. Even a looper grasshopper, which can really devastate a garden, it really can handle it. Like, it just grows so fast that it reproduces itself, and it reproduces the leaves much faster than the pests can eat it. So no treatment is necessary at all. Now, when it comes to disease, I have noticed that some of them have like this rust situation on the leaves. You can clip them off. I honestly am really lazy during the summer. It's too hot for me to try to like treat plants. They're on their own out here, and this one is no exception. So even though it does have a little bit of like this rust disease that's going on, it doesn't seem to impact the plant. It still grows very well. It still produces exceptionally, and so I don't treat them. Eventually, I think it would take out the plant, but this plant has been going for months now, and I suspect in the previous years that I have grown it, it has had these rust spots, and it continues to grow. So even if it has like a blight, if it has leaf foot bugs, if it has, like this one has leaf miners, it could just completely devastate the whole plant, and it will still grow. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need our help. Now let's grab one of the beans, and I will show you exactly what they produce. So when the beans are like this one right here, it is still kind of greenish. It has that green tint. It's still kind of soft. So I'm gonna leave this one on until it becomes like this one. So this one is brown. It cracks, it's crunchy. This is telling me that the beans are ready to be picked. Now, I come out every couple of days and pick the beans, because if you do leave them on past this point, with all our rain, they end up molding pretty quickly. So you are gonna kind of have to come and harvest them often. So then all you do is kind of squeeze the pods, kind of like you would a sunflower seed if you're trying to get the seeds out from inside a sunflower. And then the pods open up. Let me see if I can get them open. Here we go. And you can see the black beans are inside the pods. And then you just flip your hand over. I dropped one. That's going to grow one next year. That's how good they are at self-seeding. And then you have these little black beans. And they look just like black beans, guys. They do not look like black-eyed peas. They look like black beans. Each one of these pods gives you somewhere between 10 and 15 beans per pod, which is really, really good when you're talking about shelling beans. Some shelling beans like lima beans, they give you like 3 per pod. And not only does it give you so much, but there's so many beans. They're all over the place. And they put them out every single day. So every single day you'll see something about this size, and it will go from this size to about this size in about 2 days. And then it'll get to the drying point after about 5 to 7 days. So they're very, very productive, and they produce a lot. This spot right here is 1 plant. So altogether in my garden, I have 3 beds going, and each bed has 2 plants. And so far, each plant is producing about a quart-sized jar of black dried beans. Every day, I'm pulling about a 1/4 cup of beans, which is just really, really crazy in terms of the productivity of this crop. Now, the cool thing about them is once you've pulled them and you shell them like we just did, that's all you have to do to preserve them. Sometimes I will lay them out on like a paper plate or a tray or some paper towels in the house, in the AC, for just like maybe 3 or 4 days, just so that they're a flat, even layer, so that if there is any moisture left in the beans, ooh, there's one of our pests. That's actually not a pest. That's the bumblebee that's been hanging around. He doesn't really like me, so usually he gets mad if I hang out too close. So we'll see how long he lets me stay here. But once you lay them out on a single layer, you allow them to complete the drying process, making sure that there's no moisture whatsoever on the beans. Then all you got to do is store them in a jar. I encourage you to store them in something glass. Plastic sometimes holds moisture a little bit more, but glass seems to work really well. And dried beans, believe it or not, can stay good for, I don't want to overestimate, but at minimum 5 years. I mean, they last a really long time, and there's no special equipment needed in order to keep these beans. So there you have it. My favorite staple crop to grow in my southern garden, Puerto Rican black beans. Make sure you head over to the Urban Harvest, Cody Cove Farms, or Jerry's Garden, where I have seen these sold. They're not a super common bean, so you're not going to find them at big seed places like Emma Gardner or Johnny's or anything like that. I'll put the link in the description of those 3 places so that you can check them out. I got a bunch of harvesting to do. I hope this was helpful. Happy gardening, guys.